Zenith VR is the first, to me, mass market appeal VR MMORPG coming, and its success, in my opinion, will be heavily dependent on one of two things. One of those being entirely in our control, but this deep dive video will go over every aspect of my way too many hours of play, letting you know my thoughts, and for those willing to spend their time watching this video, I think it will answer many of your questions, and I hope content like this helps you. Thank you for those dedicated to watching this video. It dramatically helps the channel and me. Thoughts and opinions are my own. Let's get started.
Took so many years, I'm just waiting for the wins. I'm in debt to no one but the one who took my sins. I do it for real, there's no reason to pretend. If I do it once, I do it again.
I will show absolutely no footage past the second true area with enemies, so if you're worried about any spoilers, you are safe here, my friends. Timestamps will be provided for sections. Each section will have quick overviews, a positive, maybe negative takeaway, and my hopium on each. There is likely more to talk about, but I feel my points here will be enough for you to make your best decision.
Baby girl love my bop and I like me too. No roof on my top and my babe see-through.
Zenith is an open world VR MMORPG coming to every single headset out there. It will boast up to 100 hours of gameplay, 5 massive zones, 2 classes, each having 3 subclasses. This, of course, is just launch content, as it is a live service game, and that does have plans for a 3rd class, instant dungeons, PvP, and much more. Zenith is a one-time pay-to-play MMO at $29.99 and will give players the full experience. There are no subscription services. In-app purchases will only be optional cosmetics and won't include gameplay changes or give players any advantages other than looking sexy as fuck. Endgame content currently includes invasion events, epic world bosses, overworld dungeons, and more. Additional endgame content will continually be added, with the first patch expected to come out within weeks of launch. Looking into 2022, the Zenith team is expected to introduce plenty of new systems and content, including 3 dungeons, more crafting, and many other systems yet to be revealed. You start Zenith the same way as you would any other MMO, your setup and character creation. You're going to have to pick a shard here, which is basically like picking the server that you wish to play on. This is both good and bad. On the good side, you can look into picking a server where you reside, one that is populated to your liking, etc. On the other hand, if you prefer to play, say, on the West Coast, but you have friends also on the East Coast that you'd like to play with, well, that could get dicey based on the decisions you make here. This, however, is fairly standard to MMOs, and I share this just for the info. Next, you choose your character. It is fairly binary at male/female, but this may be one of the areas that I am probably the most negative about on this entire video, so let's get this out the way. Whether picking a male or female, once you slap the base clothes on, well, everyone kind of looks identical. No matter what combinations that I tried to make, aside from a few hairstyle choices, I'm kind of this fleshy, blobby, Eurocentric, genderless, semi-skewing to female-looking avatar. I likely will be fully suited up in game, so I'm not seeing much of my avatar, but I would still personally like to identify a little with who I choose to be in game. Give me maybe a beard option, just a jawline would be nice, some muscular definition, anything so I don't feel like a complete stranger in my body. Alongside that, with everyone looking exactly the same, the world does feel less lively this way. Now, this was just a beta, it can change over time, my gameplay, but I can't help feeling this way, and it is still a pain point every single time I log on, not feeling like who I want to be. Once you customize your character, you can choose one of 2 classes, either the Blade Master or Mage. Each will have a brief description. Additionally, you can pick one of 3 subclasses or roles for each, that of the DPS, tank, or support. Now, these roles can be switched out, however, every 60 seconds when out of combat through the Godstone menu. Each class can play as that tank, DPS, or support, but each role has its own XP bar. Lower level subclasses receive double XP from everything. Once you're done here though, you wrap up naming and customizing your character, you're ready to set foot in the world of Zenith. First thing that is likely to strike you here are the environments that you'll explore. They are, well, they're really good. Really beautiful. Right from the start of my experience, I spent more time running around, exploring the entirely open world of Zenith, looking up at the magnitude of buildings and areas around me. For my playthrough, I did play through Steam VR mostly. However, comparing it to the Quest footage that I did play, it's still great, albeit the Oculus versions really, and this may have just been me, but let me know down in the comments, They really seem to contrast some colors much more than PCVR. Basically, playing on the Oculus Quest, it felt like the color palette was almost like Until You Fall, if that example lands for anyone who's played that game as well. And while a little jarring, both are 100% up to par. In fact, performance on both was very surprising. The footage you see here was recorded at max OBS settings, 120Hz index settings, with 170% super sampling added. I never had a single frame issue and could easily see me maxing it out to more. Quest-wise, my experience, although extreme less headroom, was acceptable and frame drops happened extremely rarely, and LOD distances, the distance basically until you start seeing far away images start to render, was surprisingly good. Potentially, and this is speculation, I wonder if there's actually any headroom left at all for Oculus users, and wonder how that will impact the development of the game as it moves forward, as I really do think it's maxing out what the Oculus Quest can do, but I digress. Overall, if you were looking for atmosphere and actually feel like sweeping grand and large environmental set pieces, if you want worlds that feel alive and exploration being encouraged and rewarded, the good news is I think Zenith checks all those boxes for me and more.
These are the colors that come.
So let's talk about menus here. Traditional MMOs have a lot of menus, and that works for traditional gaming. In fact, many MMOs have tons of mods to change the UI, change the menus and everything, get that perfect tailored experience to you. This menu customization, well, it's probably going to be mostly 100% absent for a while, but I'm not sure if that's an issue, and what you feel about menus may be entirely dependent on the person, but here are my thoughts. First, for the UI, your level, health, stamina, godstones, weapons, items, etc., they're all pretty much center screen at the bottom. I am personally not a fan of any visible UI in VR, I like to be fully immersed, but I felt like this was a really good compromise. Most times when focusing on the task at hand, the UI here is so low that it is actually out of your view. In fact, I actually have hardly any footage to show of this UI because I forgot to purposely record it, basically purposely look down, and the fact that it is lower than eye level in recordings leads to it actually not showing at all, and I can really dig that. Additionally, you can bring both active quest and information up, and that will come up to the mid left of your screen, and that, yes, will be in your view almost 100% of the time and can be very distracting. This, however, with a simple button press can be removed. Lastly, for UI, you can bring up a mini-map connected to your left hand, and I thought that was a fantastic add. Overall, the UI is minimalistic, it has some options for customization, but very few, and for version 1 of this, since again this was beta play, I do not see any glaring issues with it at this time, and I think that most people's enjoyment as a whole will not be negatively impacted by the UI. That can be dependent heavily though, person to person. However, let's talk about the actual in-game menu that you'll have to use, and here it is quite a lot. So much in fact that if I was to explain every single one of these tabs, this video would never be done. However, like I said, the volume of menu exploration could be problematic for some or a benefit to others. You of course have your gear and items menu as you would expect, but you also have a godstone menu, a cooking menu, a collection menu, guilds menu, friend menu, map menu, quest menu, 3 different settings menu, and I think there's 2 more that I haven't said. That is a lot. While each menu does a decent job of providing enough info to make it usable, there's going to be a lot of self-teaching here that you'll have to do. Experimentation and messing around with each tab is currently the only way of learning everything, and even then you will likely not understand some things until much later in game, or at least help from others in tutorials. This could be a large burden to some feeling comfortable enough with everything Zenith has to offer, and could be a scary endeavor for those uninitiated to MMOs. If I had to give any opinion though, I will say being able to open up all these menus, still being technically in the world of Zenith, and having some transparency to the in-game world behind me felt kind of good. It didn't feel like I was 100% stuck in the menu since I could still see the world around me, and I actually feel like they are value added and come off as entirely gameplay to me. Inventory management, watching progress bars, hunting for herbs and flowers, all were enjoyable to me. However, if you do get overwhelmed with limited instructions, many aspects of Zenith currently may be extremely unfriendly to you. The TLDR of the menus here, there's lots of menus, there's limited instructions, but I do feel a love and hate on these will be entirely dependent on the player.
Watch how I move, cause I know the brink's coming. Watch for the blues, cause I know that they dumping. Nothing in my view, so it's hush on discussion.
Combat takes the form many will be familiar with in MMOs, yet there are subtle changes here that really work well for VR. Godstones are the bread and butter here. Godstones allow you to swap abilities in and out, and they drop as you explore the world. Godstones do gain XP though, and you can level up Godstones by selecting minor and major Godstone nodes and upgrading them over time. Depending on the role you pick, DPS, support, and tank, well, these Godstones will continuously change. Godstones are typically activated by the cadence of how you fight. For example, on a Blade Master, a Godstone may trigger every 3 large swipes directionally down, or maybe an extremely long swipe horizontally will use stamina points to dish out larger damage. Learning stamina and cadence is essential to learning combat, and while the menus give you cadence directions, directions are still extremely vague. Thankfully for Blade Masters, the class I picked, noodle sword fighting does not work in Zenith. Noodle fighting basically being the ability to wildly swing your sword around as quick as possible, lacking any intention. With the Blade Master, you will have to watch for the visual and audio cues that show you that your sword is charged before swinging. Watching for visual and audio cues will show when your sword is actually charged and ready to be swung for maximum damage. You have to activate these cadence abilities automatically by making sure your third charge swing is either a vertical or horizontal slash. Don't forget that you can throw your swords at enemies, which is both satisfying and great for pulling aggro. These are all things learned. I had to be shown them at some points, albeit there is a quick tutorial aspect, but I found the tutorials lacking in details. There are many MMOs where blocking is more of a random attribute, but in Zenith you can use your stamina to actively block, and that kind of makes this feel less MMO cookie cutter and encourages me to experiment and have more fun. Combat really shines when you combine teamwork, Godstone abilities, and pair everything with timed rush abilities, flying, jumping, etc. Can the combat get stale? Sure, but if you understand traditional MMO combat, I really can't see you getting disappointed here. It is pretty much the menu matching expectations. So I won't get into every little subtask you can do, but there's a lot to experiment and have fun with. You can climb anything and fly almost anywhere, albeit you'll have to build your stamina up with Amara's tears scattered throughout the world to really enjoy that fully. But really the freedom is yours to be had. You can search for tears, do quests, search for chests, bosses, and dungeons. You can cook and enchant, of which is especially important cooking. It's basically essential to being strong and competitive. You can upgrade weapons, search for loot. All the MMO building blocks are here and they work well. But if you're still here, here is one tinfoil hat Zenith theory as well for what class you may want to choose. MMOs will always have to constantly shift as classes being overpowered or underpowered happen. Testing internally versus having hundreds of thousands of players making characters really will show you what needs to be buffed and nerfed, and that can't always be understood pre-launch. There is nothing worse in an MMO than picking a class you love at launch, getting lucky and realizing that they're pretty powerful, but over time constantly getting nerfed. This is needed for a healthy ecosystem, but nonetheless it still hurts. In my opinion, looking at how the two classes visually look and function, I honestly feel the Mage class looks so much cooler and functions visually much better than the Blade Master. It just seems a lot more time was spent on the Mage than the Blade Master in my opinion, who looks very cookie cutter. Maybe that means the Blade Master will end up needing more love in the future, making it a safer bet for early picking and a good investment early on, but that's just a tinfoil hat pick of mine. I can say very confidently at $29.99, if you like MMO RPGs as a hardcore or casual users, I really can't find any concrete reasons to pass on this. While some areas need a lot of work, the core offerings it has now, the performance of it all, and what they're offering for future content will have you covering at least your initial purchase price in no time. It will sell well, and I expect most users to feel the value there is day one. I think there are two things that could hold this back though, one being in our control and one less so. What is out of our control is the hardware of the headsets. I have no inside info here, but in my play, I really can't imagine that there's much headroom left on the Quest. Since this title is co-play with all headsets, what we can expect in upgrades will be limited by the hardware of the lowest common denominator, that being standalone VR. As new mobile headsets come out, it will be interesting how long support stays for older headsets. If older headsets will always have to be supported, I think that does limit some options here. This is not an issue only to this game. However, playing Zenith on the Quest 2, it really felt maxed out, especially when switching to the PC version. I hope the tech here does not hold the Zenith team back. What is in our control, however, is what most MMOs depend on, the community. Most MMOs live and die by the population and the community who play it. Now, the world is what we make of it, the friendships that we build, the shared experiences that we live together. If the community respects, loves, and has fun with the current world Zenith is building, well, I think all the shortcomings will be trivial and longevity will likely solve this problem. Community and MMOs are heavily dependent on each other for success, and I've seen nothing from the Zenith team that shows me that this should be a concern. Overall, Zenith should be an impressive launch, an impressive lifespan, and I personally cannot wait to jump back in. Based on way too much time in the beta already, I think that this is a must-buy VR title. If these deeper dives help you, please leave a like, subscribe, it means the world to me. As always, see you next time, Space Cowboys. Peace.